I'm Marianne and we're going to look at gouache paint today. In this series I'm going to be painting and drawing the same reference piece, which are these apples, in different ways with different mediums. So this video is about gouache paint. So here is my finished painting. What I really love about gouache is that it's really versatile and it's really forgiving. You can do some really nice solid blocks of color and you barely see your brush strokes, and you can layer the color almost similar to watercolor by adding water, which is awesome. So these are the colors that I'm going to be using. I've got a little swatch here, and I'm just going to show you how I'm going to blend and some tips and tricks with doing some dry brush, wet brush, and all sorts of things. For this painting I used 2 round brushes, a number 1 and a number 4 tack-on brushes, and I also used a flat brush, a number 2 flat brush. I've also got some water handy that you're going to be using to help blend your colors. Now, you might have noticed that these colors are very vibrant, and I haven't done any of the painting straight out of the tube. I always like to mix my colors to make them look more natural. So, to create this kind of pinky color of the inside of the apple, I'll show you my mixing tray from this piece. Now, I kind of used titanium white, lemon yellow, and yellow ochre, and I mixed these. Now, this is all dry, but the cool thing about gouache is that if you're doing a painting and you want to get the perfect colors that you did in the painting you did last night, but the colors are all dry, you can just wet your brush and you can just go over your palette and you can pick up where you left off. So you just wet it again and you can return to the same color without the hassle of mixing it all together again. So it might create a little bit more of an opaque, so a little bit more transparent, a little bit similar to watercolor, but you can create a really nice wash. If you mix it thicker with less water, straight out of the tube, it becomes like a thicker paint similar to acrylic, but it has a really nice matte finish, which I like about gouache. Here I'm going to show you what it looks like to create a wash. So just adding lots of water and then always having a spare bit of paper next to you that has that you can do some swatches on. Just move this so you can see. So you can create a really thin layer just like watercolors by adding lots of water, or you can get thicker and blending wet and wet. Do you see how the colors have interacted and it's kind of transitioning nicely? So you can move this color around, and similar to watercolors, you can use a bit of kitchen towel and you can blot some of that color away if you've got a bit too much, or by wetting your brush and dabbing it on some kitchen towel, some kitchen paper, you can also pick it up like that, and then you can create a really nice blend. And then the cool thing is, if you've got, you know, the fresh color straight out of the tube with a nice thin brush, you can create some really hard color. So if I just get some straight out of the tube like that, then it's a really nice thick paint. And And even while the paper is still a little wet, you can create a nice hard color, and you can blend them together, which is awesome. Now, this is color straight out of the tube, and as I said, I don't like to use a lot of color straight out of the tube. It's often too vibrant and not so natural. So make sure that you're doing a lot of good mixing like this so you can really experiment with some of the colors. Another thing I really like to do with gouache is some dry brush. So say that I use my nice apple color here, which is a mixture of crimson and vermilion. So vermilion is a bit more orangey. Now if this were to dry, then with my flat brush, I can do some flat brush work. So I'm just gonna blow on it a little, and it's already becoming nice and dry. And then to do some dry brush, I'm not gonna wet my brush before I go into the mixture, into the paint. And I'm just gonna pick up some of this that's like kind of half dry and half wet. And then you see all the little nice little spikes that the brush makes. Here, let me get nice and close. So you could create some nice little strokes. And it almost becomes a bit like a bit crayon-y. And there you've got like some really nice dry brush texture. Now, I used a little bit of dry brush technique to get some of the highlights on the apple. So here you can see some of the brush strokes that were made with a dry brush, similar to what I just showed you. Here you can see that I've used a more hard color, like almost straight out of the tube, to create some more fine line work that I did with my smaller round brush, my number 1 brush. And similar here, some more fine line work with the number 1 brush with the hard color on dry paper. So any line work you want to layer, you'll do that making sure that everything is nice and dry, and then going over it. But if you want to blend a bit more, you can see it's already dry. You make sure that it's not dry yet, so you can transition the color in nicely. Now you might have noticed that I'm using different paper in each of these videos. This paper is nice and firm. It is a GSM of 225. This pad was called a field pad, and it's perfect for gouache paint because it absorbs the paint a little bit like watercolor paper, but it doesn't really have a grain like a lot of watercolor paper. It's nice and smooth, but it's nice and thick, so if you do use water, it won't warp the paper as much. But you can see even with a GSM of 225, it's warped the paper just a little bit. So there is my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I really look forward to seeing all your gouache paintings. Until next time.